So welcome everybody to Intact Global's inaugural conference. Yeah, let's go, baby. You know, I thought that there was a demand for this type of event, and we were right? Sold out, so thank you all for coming from all around the country. And we also have, in different countries as well, Canada, right, neighboring countries, but also the farthest, Uganda, Michael Abanika, so 37 hours of hardship. So we love you, Michael, thank you. Just so you have the lay of the land, we're in Portland, Oregon, as you guys all know, because you probably flew here. But for those of you watching the live stream, that's where we're meeting, and that's where this inaugural conference and the inaugural, let's say, effort to end the genital mutilation of children on constitutional ground begins. So this is ground zero, guys, and we're very happy for you to come out and support. It's a little strange that we have to keep fighting this fight in 2025 and that we continue to perform cosmetic genital cutting and mutilation on children, but we are where we are. We didn't make this up, but we're here to fix it. Our children are counting on it. They're the most vulnerable, the least politically powerful, and they're counting on us. So, that's what we're here to do. We have 2 great days of talks lined up. I guess it's a little, boastful, but the first talk is the state of Intactivism. And so I just wanted to kind of give an overview briefly. Where are we as a movement, right? Because, Oregon is a great place to start. They have a genital cutting rate of probably 20% or so, 1 in 5 boys, almost 0 girls. So we're talking 1 in 10 children in this state are genitally cut, which is a lot, but compared to the rest of America, it's a little. And compared to the rest of the world, it's still a lot, because we're a total aberration in our affinity in the United States for cutting and mutilating our children's genitals for cosmetic, medically unnecessary reasons. And so I'm going to reiterate that a lot of times because this is not a fringe movement. This is the global community, more or less, is behind us in protecting children, not performing cosmetic surgeries on their genitals. But America needs a little push, and that's what we are. So anyway, as I said, welcome to the inaugural conference. We have attendees from dozens of states, other countries, which we're very pleased. And, a round of applause for this, but we sold out the conference venue. So thank you all for coming. Again, I was a little worried. We're just like, okay, we're going to do it. And the demand is here. I don't see any empty tables. And also the GoFundMe, I'd like to thank all of you here. A lot of you donated, also those of you on the live stream. We raised $30,000 on the GoFundMe, so thank you so much. We were able to get a lot done with that $30,000, as I'll explain further. And if we could do this much with $30,000, what could we do with 3 million? This is an international human rights movement, so yes, these sound like big numbers, but compared to how much good we can do, how much progress we can make, it's a rounding error for some people, right? So now I'd like to talk more about Intact Global, because this is not the Eric Clopper show. We're an organization, we're a nonprofit corporation, and we have collective goals and collective governance. So what is Intact Global's mission and vision, right? And so our mission is to protect all children from forced, non-religious genital mutilation. And we're going to do that mostly through strategic impact litigation, which we've already begun, and I'll talk about that soon. And as I mentioned before, we are backed by a global movement. So yes, we are a fast-growing movement of children's rights advocates in the United States, but globally, almost no countries circumcise their children, at least at the scale that we do, and most of it is religious, right? We're essentially alone in the scale in which we perform secular, medically unnecessary circumcision. And our vision at Intact Global, and we believe we can achieve this, maybe by the end of the year, certainly by the end of next, is to make Intactivism mainstream, right? Through litigation, social media, and other types of outreach. Because right now, the genital mutilation, that phrase, it's already very popular in mainstream discourse, but we don't want to talk about where genital mutilation is today politically. We want to talk about day 1, day 8, when we're literally cutting our children's genitals like right after birth, where there's no autonomy at all, no decision making. That's what we want to make mainstream, and we want to make it cool, assumed, and normal to be an intactivist, right? It is the cool thing to do to not cut your baby. It is assumed that you're not going to cut or mutilate or cosmetically alter your children's genitals at birth. And it's normal to, maybe not to be intact in this country, but to advocate for intactivism, right? And so our goal, which plays off of our mission statement, is one, we want to perform litigation. So we have impact constitutional equal protection litigation, which we've already filed in Oregon, and I'll talk about briefly. But there's also different types of lawsuits we can pursue as well, and we likely will pursue. And this first litigation we thought was the most impactful, but at the end of the day, there's many different legal theories that if you're circumcised, you can sue. So Peter Adler, of counsel to my law firm, one of the primary authors of the complaint, will discuss. And we could defund circumcision, which I'll talk about tomorrow. You could sue doctors and hospitals, which is the probably hardest route and most resource intensive. And like I mentioned before, we raised $30,000, which, it's a good chunk of change. We can get a lot done, but you can't take on the medical industrial complex. You're not even gonna, it's just not gonna work with that type of cash. So we wanna do the things that would be most impactful for each dollar raised. And then we're also gonna be scaling up our social media and education. So before this event, not including the 1 or 2 weeks before, Intact Global social media presence was practically absent. And that all changed because Justin Bonyai, the conference manager. And then finally, we want to open a dialogue with religious leaders, right? Because I'm a Jewish American and I would like to protect Jewish children. We have other members on our team who are members of the Islamic faith, and they want to protect Islamic children. And so we want to start that conversation with religious leaders to say, okay, what's in the best interest of our children in these religious communities? Now, I've gotten a lot of flack. You can't make anyone happy, but you get flack for, trying to target religious circumcision, which we're not doing. You get flack for not, like, why are you leaving these babies to be cut? But, this is a big question. Why are we dealing with non-religious genital mutilation, right? Circumcision. Well, if you look at kind of the data that we have available, is what you could see is practically 85% or so of circumcisions that occur in America are done for purported health benefits. Oh, it must be cleaner, it must prevent disease or something else, even though we have much higher rates of STDs than Europe that doesn't circumcise. But that is the meme that has proliferated in the United States. Now that's falling with time, but that is the primary motivator for circumcision in the US. Oh, it must be good for my child because the doctor recommended it. But the problem is when you have a for-profit healthcare system, it's for profit, it's not for health. And you don't make money not performing procedures. So there's adverse incentives at play. Now, if you look at what is the least likely reason to circumcise a child, it is religion, right? It's less than 15%. Important, very important. So we'd love to protect all children from genital mutilation, genital cutting, circumcision, whatever you want to call it. But the reality is a much, much smaller percentage of children in the United States are circumcised for religious reasons. And the way that our legal system is structured, based off of constitutional rights, religion has a special place. It's heightened scrutiny often if you're going to challenge religious practices. And the reality is, we are working with the resources that we have, and we want to get concrete wins, and we want to protect as many children as we can. And so that's where we're focusing on the medically unnecessary non-religious genital cutting. As the slide says, we want to recognize political realities. Yeah, we'd love to come in and protect every child at once, but we're going to have to do this incrementally. And yes, we do want to open a dialogue with religions, though, because religions have evolved over time. The Grand Mufti of Egypt said in 2006, Islam no longer circumcises their females. We're a religion that is in line with modern science, right? Judaism used to have, they used to have much more graphic circumcision procedures that required actual mouth to genital contact with children, and they largely moved away from that, except in small pockets in super Orthodox New York City. So religions do evolve with time. Catholicism evolved. They no longer say, oh, no gay marriages, because I think they weren't raising as much money because the culture had shifted, right? So whatever works, but we want to engage in dialogue with religions to say, okay, how do we move forward? Now, why Oregon? Why are we in Oregon as opposed to Texas or Florida or California, Massachusetts, you name it? Well, Pretty simple, and I have to thank my friends at GalDef. Tim Hammond is here, so thank you. This is part of a web page I put on my website, right? It's an old website, needs to be updated, but the reality is Tim Hammond and his volunteers at GalDef looked at every single state's laws on anti-female genital mutilation, all 50 states. Which states outlaw female genital cutting, right? And the 41 states do. Now, which states also have a constitutional mandate that prohibits discrimination on the basis of sex, legal protections? Because if you're just going to protect baby girls, well, that's a class of children. But most constitutions, or a lot of them, certainly in the US, prohibit that type of discrimination. You have to protect every child equally. That is the constitutional mandate in many states. And so we looked at the constitutional mandates of all these states. We looked at the anti-female genital cutting laws of all the states. And then we looked at which states have passed anti-female genital cutting laws for the longest, because some have been about 30 years, right? And so that means the plaintiff, they can be an adult, they can articulate why this was not their choice, why they perhaps were harmed. Because if you outlawed female genital cutting 5 years ago, a 4-year-old, obviously we want to protect him, but he's not going to be as effective at communicating why this is important, right? Because he's not old enough. So what I did was, okay, these are the 6 states that would be best. And what happened was, Oregon, through our friend here, Brian Turner, which I saw him earlier, but he said, look, Oregon's going to be the state that's going to lead the charge here. We're going to protect every child from genital mutilation. There he is, Brian Turner. Well, applause. Brian is why we're here, because he said, look, Oregon's the state that's going to do this. We're proud enough. We're forward-seeking. We're not chained by these old customs. They actually don't circumcise the vast majority of their children. 9 out of 10 plus children are not generally cut in current day. So it's a great place to start. Brian brought it here. But, why else Oregon? And I mentioned this a little earlier, but, the constitutional provisions are friendly to us. They have an equal protection clause since its founding, saying you cannot give one class of citizens privileges or immunities. You could argue bodily integrity is a right, but certainly a privilege that baby girls get, as they should, but we should give that to every child, right? And so the Oregon Supreme Court has interpreted this part of the Constitution to prohibit discrimination on the basis of sex. But for Oregon, that was not good enough, because you have to really kind of read into it, okay, no sex discrimination. So just to remove any ambiguity, the people of Oregon said, look, no sex-based discrimination at all. Every person has equal rights on the basis of sex, which is great. So this is an explicit mandate that actually prohibits laws like the anti-female genital mutilation law that was passed in 1999 in Oregon. And as I've said many times, very low rates of circumcision, genital cutting, and FGM has been banned here in 1999. Because of all of this, and we raised the $30,000, we had great legal support from Peter Adler, from Samar Safarini, we actually were able to, and Brian Turner, who has been pioneering this, we found our brave plaintiffs who are joining us in this room today. And we actually filed their complaint, Lake Paraguay, who was the attorney who actually established marriage equality here 10 years ago. So sort of a round of applause for Lake, kind of a heavy hitter. So Lake filed the Hadachek v. Oregon complaint on Thursday. And we have our lead plaintiff, Dane, here. So Dane, can we round of applause for Dane for taking this stand? Thank you, Dane. Your courage inspires us. Seriously, it's a big deal. And so Dane said, look, I've been harmed from this, but I want to protect other children, right? Because we've got 100 million people in this country who've been harmed. And so, as I mentioned, we filed the complaint on Thursday, March 27th. So all of you watching on the live stream, it's a very, very strong complaint. If you go to intactglobal.org, you can download it. It's all over the place. You can't miss it. And yeah, so it was filed March 27th. It has a case number. It got through the courts, no problem. And it is available for download, as I said. And so the team, to talk about the team real briefly, we've got Peter Adler in the room who's giving a talk. He was the primary author of the complaint. Let's give a round of applause for Peter. when Peter was doing a fellowship at University of Cambridge, because he's super brilliant, or Magdalene College, I believe, he actually devoted a big part of his work to working on this complaint, right? And then Samar Safarini, also brilliant and a UVA law student, so round of applause for Samar. I am not easily impressed, but Samar, he really made the complaint sing. It was really something else. So really, Samar is a hero. And then we have Lake, as I mentioned, who has advanced constitutional civil rights in this state before, and we're looking to do so again with Lake. So round of applause for Lake. Let's not leave Lake out. So my next talk, and we're going to have 2 days of talks in between, is going to be discussing the future of intactivism. Because right now, circumcision was probably closer to, when is this? 1970. It was probably closer to 90% at some point. You know, there was a lot of variance that went down a lot. That we have the 2012 statement that pushed it up, but we have no idea actually what the circumcision rate is in this country. We believe that it's gone down a lot, and the CDC hasn't released numbers because people will do what other people do. The number one indicator to determine if somebody recycles is if their neighbor recycles. Right? So people will do what other people do around them. And so if we get accurate data that says, look, we're all moving away from genital cutting, it's not necessarily linear, it could be exponential, but we just don't have that data. We know in Oregon it's going down and it continues to go down, and we hope to, let's say, circle the square and protect all children. But yeah, our goal at Intact Global is to protect as many children as fast as possible, and religious cutting is it's just not feasible for us to spend limited resources in challenging. We want to encourage religious leaders to make that decision for themselves. But we do want to speak with a unified movement. And yes, many of us, or all of us, have different political views. Some we would never meet over dinner for other reasons, but we're all here because we want to protect children from genital cutting. We want to keep our focus on the ball and say, look, how do we work together, put our differences aside, and do what's best for the next generation of children?